Good afternoon, everyone. Definitely a news-filled weekend for New York sports. Had probably the biggest piece of information in the MLB offseason go down. Obviously, we have football. We had a trade in for the New York Rangers in hockey. But I hinted to it. The biggest piece of news that I definitely want to spend a bulk of the time talking about is Juan Soto signing with the Mets. I'm not mad at the Yankees whatsoever. The Yankees offer was publicly put out there, and it was for just $5 million less than what the Mets ended up paying for Juan Soto, and it was that of I want to say it was 14,760 or 15,760, and the Mets was 14,765 or something like that. And the Mets deal has some sort of caveat where there's an opt back in, similar to the Garrett Cole deal, where the Mets can add $5 million more after I want to say it's year 9 per year to retain Soto if he were to opt out. It's definitely bittersweet for me because obviously I'm a Yankees fan, but I'm also covering New York sports, so I have to keep a level head here and think about it as New York sports in general. To me, it was always the Mets if it came down to money, because the Yankees obviously gave him a very competitive offer, $5 million less. He's going to make more in advertising as a Yankee than the Mets. And obviously, that Yankee legacy is something a lot of people talk on. And I remember back in 2022 when the Yankees re-signed Aaron Judge. I think that was the deciding factor for Aaron Judge, and he chose legacy over money. And it's the opposite for Juan Soto here. What we're seeing a guy who, man, we gave him all the love we could. I was out there in the bleachers multiple times chanting, "Resign Soto. We love you, Soto." Just the roll calls in general when he would point back up to us. I really thought that he loved the Yankees. I thought that he wanted to be a part of this Yankee legacy. I thought that this was the next great dynamic duo between Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, but that's always what it was. Aaron Judge's name comes first, Juan Soto's name comes second. To me, it has to be a little bit of the fact that Juan Soto was a little selfish and he wants to be the best player on his roster, which is completely understandable as a guy who obviously a huge part of his game is the energy he brings on the field, and to be overshadowed by another player on your team, I don't think he likes that, and I think it really bothered him, and I think that was the deciding factor. Something came out afterwards, after the contracts were released, after I turned my phone off and went to bed because I was not very happy. Um, was Juan Soto chose the Mets because they have a brighter future? I really do not believe that whatsoever. Um, if you look at the Yankees prospect system, they've got multiple names coming up the line. I think I got another guy that possibly could have overshadowed Juan Soto and Jason Dominguez. I think Jason Dominguez saw the fact that there are multiple guys on this Yankees roster that can become better than Juan Soto. Listen, Juan Soto is not a five-tool player. Juan Soto is what he is. He's a great hitter, and that's about all he can do. He is an average base runner at best, and he is a below average defender. There were multiple plays last year. Someone put together, not that I agree with it or not, but I saw it on Twitter, was a low light reel of Juan Soto. I've been asking for the highlight reel. My buddy Keith McPherson been asking for the highlight reel too. And instead, Yankees fans released a low light reel, which I think is kind of a classless act. We're supposed to be an organization full of class, and our fans have to represent that. That's definitely something that bothered me a little bit seeing that. Obviously, his defense isn't stellar, but to put that out there, definitely something I was bothered by. And listen, he brought us to the World Series. He had multiple moments in the playoffs. I thank Juan Soto for the 1 year he had here. He was generational. And when you say generational, I am a huge baseball fan. I just wrote two papers. One was 8 pages, and the other was 6. One was about Moneyball and the impacts it had. The other was about how Australia is building itself up to be the next baseball powerhouse. That's kind of besides the point, but I just wanted to tell you guys how much I love baseball and how big of a fan I am. I am super passionate about baseball. And when you say the word generational, a lot of people think it's like, oh, he's just this guy that comes once in a generation. No, when you say generational, it means you're creating a generation of fans just by having him on your team. In Queens, I congratulate the Mets for finally getting a guy that's a superstar, a bona fide superstar, because obviously they have Francisco Lindor, they had Pete Alonso. I don't think they're going to retain Pete Alonso, which isn't that big of an issue there for them. But when you say the word generational, you're creating a generation of fans. There's going to be fans for 15 years. I saw Keith McPherson tweeted out his kid's never gonna remember the one and done year for Juan Soto, and that's pretty much how it is. There's 15 years before we see the end of this story. You win one World Series, it's worth it for the Mets, in my opinion. Obviously, they haven't won in decades, and you win one World Series, it's worth it. That's the bottom line, and we are gonna know if this contract was worth it for another 15 years. And a lot of kids aren't gonna remember the 1 year Juan Soto had with the Yankees, but you know who is? Those Mets fans, those new generation of Mets fans, the young kids out there that are gonna be seeing 22 in right field for the New York Mets. These kids are gonna be wearing Juan Soto jerseys for the next 15 years and beyond that, because I genuinely believe Juan Soto is gonna go down as an all-time great Met, an all-time hated Yankee, obviously, because I think the message I've got from the fans in general is we feel hurt, we feel betrayed, but that's not how it should be. It's a business above all else. He went after the money. There's nothing wrong with that for Juan Soto. I'm going to delve a little bit deeper into this because I think I've hit it pretty much on the head of how it is, just plain and simple. But I want to get into a little bit deeper. And like I said, in terms of the Mets, congratulations. But you have to look at your team as a whole. I just saw something. The Yankees F war is projected to be the same as the Mets. The Yankees have not made a single move. They just lost a guy with generational wins above replacement. He has he produces like above a 7 WAR every single season. He gives you about 7 more wins a season. The Yankees projections are still 44 WAR. The Mets WAR projections jumped from 37 to 44. So the Yankees and Mets are projected for similar wins above replacement. They have similar rosters right now, and the Yankees have yet to make a move. So I think this is my point where Juan Soto is saying that the future for the Mets is so bright, and that's why he chose this wonderful organization that he thinks is going to be this powerhouse for the future. Look at their starting rotation. They have one guy that could possibly be an ace, and I wouldn't even call him ace caliber in Kodai Senga because I don't think he can pitch every 5 days. I'm sorry. A lot of these Japanese players come over. I don't know if a lot of the listeners know this, but in Japan, they pitch every 7 days. They go on a week cycle, not a 5 day cycle. That's why you see so many injuries happen. I saw it happen with Masahiro Tanaka when he came over. Kodai Senga got hurt last year. Otani has needed Tommy John surgery. These players are not used to it. The evidence is there. They signed Clay Holmes to be a starter, and people are like, "Oh, he might not actually be a starter." No, you don't sign a guy to $15 million a year if he's gonna be in your bullpen. That is a complete overpay if that's the case too. A guy that seems to fold every single time he's in a high leverage situation. I saw it with my own eyes. I've seen Clay Holmes blow some of the biggest games I've ever been to. And just because you're putting him at starter doesn't mean he's gonna be great. He's got one good pitch. That's the molding for a great reliever, but not a great starter. Starters need 4 or 5 great pitches in order to compete. We saw it with Carlos Rodon the first year he came over to the Yankees. He had 2 pitches. He had a fastball and a slider. He's pitching in a division that was relatively weak with the White Sox. And he struggled tremendously once he came up against these AL East teams his first year. And he realized, oh, wait, maybe I need another pitch. I saw him develop a changeup last year, and his numbers were a lot better than they were the first year. If you're talking about a team that's got a great future, I don't know if the New York Mets are it. They got Frankie Montas as another starter. This is a guy that the Yankees also got. This is the Mets' MO, in my opinion. They go out and they get Yankees reclamation projects. They get people that were on the Yankees, did not succeed. The Yankees realized, okay, they're not built for this. The Mets picked them up, hope they'll do well. Worked out with Luis Severino last year, kind of worked out with Harrison Bader, but guess what? They're both not on the team going into 2025. This is what the Mets do. They go out and they get Yankees reclamation projects. This is probably the first time I think I've ever seen the Mets go out there and get a player that is still good that the Yankees actually wanted and was on their team the season prior. Great for them. You could finally say you got one player from the Yankees that might actually make a difference. Their bullpen was one of the worst in baseball last year too. And that had they have done nothing to address it. You have a guy like Edwin Diaz, who's the highest paid closer in all of baseball. And whenever he's thrown into the big situation, seems like he folds. You saw it in the playoffs last year. They got lucky, though, because their offense bailed them out. Th- This is what I'm trying to get to here. Juan Soto may try and say that the reason he signed with the Mets was because they have a greater future. It's baloney to me. There has to be something deeper to it. I think it's a mix of the fact that he's not the best player on the team. He probably never will be the best player on the Yankees because they have players in the pipeline like Spencer Jones and Jason Dominguez. Great for him. I think Juan Soto's a great player. I think he's a star player. But the Mets overpaid for a guy that only does one thing well. And I think they're going to try and change him a little bit with that one thing he does well. Have him try and hit more home runs because home runs attract a greater audience. But what Juan Soto's MO has been his whole career has been he gets on base. And I saw this with the Mets team last year. That was a huge issue for them. And I think, yes, it's a great move on paper, but I think some of the players on the roster are going to be like, hey, Juan, can't you hit more home runs? Don't you think you could try and chase the record? And you're going to see him overswing a little bit, get a little bit uncomfortable. I think he's going to have a transition year. I saw it with Bryce Harper when he went to Philly. And I think Bryce Harper fits Philly perfectly. Right now, I think Juan Soto fits the Mets perfectly because he's selfish and arrogant, kind of like the whole Mets history has been. You look at the bad boy Mets back in the day, back in the 1960s, and it's kind of been the whole story for the New York Mets has always been that they are an arrogant organization, and they just got a player that fits that mold perfectly. I think the bottom line with this is Juan Soto didn't love the Yankees. He loved New York, and he didn't like not being the best player on his team. A lot of things were coming out that he loves Aaron Judge. If he loved Aaron Judge, he would have taken some sort of inspiration from Judge, who took almost $100 million less to stay with the Yankees, and Juan Soto took $5 million more to go to the crosstown rivals. If he really loved Aaron Judge like everyone says he does, he would have stayed. And to Yankees fans, and I said it during the playoffs, you ever think of booing Aaron Judge again, I want you to think about it twice. Because this guy took $100 million less to stay with the Yankees. And Juan Soto just abandoned us for $5 million more. I think that is a testament to how good of a person, how good of a leader, how good of a captain, how good of a role model Aaron Judge is, and Yankees fans should never boo him again. I gotta bring this up too. Do you think Juan Soto will really ever replicate the season he had last year with the Yankees, his best career year by far on paper, without hitting behind Aaron Judge? I highly doubt it. And I think we saw Juan Soto struggle a little bit when Bryce Harper left the Nationals. He struggled when he got to the Padres. I think he's going to struggle his first year with the Mets. I don't wish him to struggle, but it's just what I feel. I will be booing him at the stadium because he did abandon our fan base and the love that we poured into Juan Soto. I have both a home and away Juan Soto jersey because of how much I loved the guy and I thought how good of a general uh, player he was. And now it's a huge waste to me. I spilled coffee this morning. I really debated cleaning it up with one of my Juan Soto jerseys, but I didn't because we don't got names on the back and someone's going to wear 22 eventually. Um, but I want to move on to the Yankees plan B. Obviously, we got to fill a huge offensive void here. We have holes at first base, second base now that Gleyber Torres is gone, possibly third base if you move Jazz Chisholm to second. It could either be second or third. And we need an outfielder. So I talked about it a little bit when I before I had Keith on Plan B. Keith said no Plan Bs, but I kind of disagreed with that take there. I love him, but I definitely disagreed with that because now we're in the situation where we need a Plan B, and I think the Yankees definitely had a Plan B. I think we're going to see it unfold. If we don't, I'm going to be furious, but I definitely think they do. First base, I think, is position number one. They have to go after. So you could either acquire Cody Bellinger to be your first baseman or your outfielder. I do believe the Yankees do trade for Cody Bellinger this offseason. I love Cody Bellinger. Dad played for the Yankees. Perfect story there. I think he wants to be a New York Yankee. I think the Yankees have never gone after him as they should have. And I think in Yankee Stadium, he would flourish with his swing. He hits for a high average. He has speed. He's a great fielder. He's more of a five-tool player than Juan Soto is, personally. That's what I believe. But he's not as great of a player as Juan Soto. I think the first move they're going to make is acquiring Cody Bellinger and Nico Horner from the Chicago Cubs. I think that either fills your first base or your outfield hole, and it fills the fact that you're filling a left-handed power bat and you're getting a second baseman back to fill second base where Gleyber Torres is now gone. It's basically expected that Gleyber Torres does not return to the New York Yankees. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked now that Juan Soto signed with the Mets. Gleyber Torres goes to the Mets. Gleyber Torres and Juan Soto were like brothers on the team. I saw them. I think they were the two closest guys. I do. Um, but yeah, you get either a first baseman or an outfielder, and now a second baseman to fill that hole. I think that's move number one. I think that should be number one on the Yankees' priority right now. First base, obviously, you can either acquire Cody Bellinger to play first base, or you can acquire him to play outfield. Personally, I think it's going to be outfield because he provides a lot more value out there with his mobility, his glove, and his arm. I think he provides a lot more value out there than he does at first base. But first baseman, I want to see the Yankees acquire. It has to either be Christian Walker or Pete Alonso. I'd love to see them get Pete Alonso and completely tear apart Mets fans like they did to me. That's just me being a human being there and not being looking at it with a third person point of view. I am also human and have my feelings, as you can tell with some of the things I have said. And I would love them to get Pete Alonso now, just so we could kind of switch roles here. I think that he is also a generational talent in some sort. I think that he created a generation of Mets fans. I think most of the fans I see were wearing Alonso jerseys at City Field. They were not wearing DeGrom jerseys. You saw some DeGrom jerseys even after he left. They were not wearing Lindor jerseys. They were wearing Alonso jerseys because he was homegrown talent and he was he's from Jersey and he loved the Mets. But I think that all changed when they acquired Francisco Lindor. I think they butted heads a lot, and I think we saw some of the beef with McNeil and Lindor, but I think a lot of that beef happened between Alonso and Lindor as well. They're two completely different types of players, if you ask me. I think Lindor's arrogant. I think that Alonso is a natural born leader. I think Alonso fits into our team perfectly. And I think that's the guy they're going to go with. But I'd be perfectly fine with them going after Christian Walker as well to fill the first base position. The next thing up is a huge one, and I've seen it around the news a lot, is the Yankees need to acquire a top line starter. I think they were going to do that with or without acquiring Juan Soto. And I think now they might even acquire both of these guys, Max Fried and Corbin Burns. They have had meetings with both of them as of last week, I believe they had meetings with both of them. I might be wrong. They're probably going to have meetings again at the winter meetings. Um, And these are 2 guys, I'm gonna be honest, I don't take one over the other. I love Corbin Burns, I think he's one of the best pitchers in baseball, but I love Max Fried as well. Max Fried's a lefty, that's kind of an edge over Corbin Burns, another righty. I think Max Fried's a more complete pitcher. I think Corbin Burns relies on his velocity, so when he gets older, there might be a little bit of trouble and complications there. I think that Max Fried fits the Yankees better. I think Corbin Burns might be a slightly better player as of right now, but I think for the future, if you're looking forward, Max Fried is the better choice there. Lastly, I want to acquire a top closer. The top closer on the market right now is Tanner Scott. He's the guy the Yankees looked into acquiring at the trade deadline. I think a huge weakness the Yankees had down the stretch was the fact they didn't have an elite closer. Luke Weaver stepped into that role perfectly, but I think it's time Luke Weaver returns to a middle reliever slash setup man. I think he's more valuable there. He pitches multiple innings. He could pitch the sixth, seventh, and eighth if you need him to. He has that stretched out ability in him. And I think if you acquire a top line closer, it makes that bullpen more complete, solidifies it. And I think that's a perfect move for the Yankees. I think that's the best way the offseason can go for them. Obviously, if they acquire Cody Bellinger to play first base, you could look at other outfield options. Teoscar Hernandez has been heavily rumored. Anthony Santander has been heavily rumored. Those are guys I wouldn't mind seeing either if they were to play Cody Bellinger at first base. But like I said, I believe Cody Bellinger is more valuable in the outfield. So for me, the plan B would involve Cody Bellinger playing the outfield, acquiring a top first baseman, either Christian Walker or Pete Alonso, acquiring a top line starter, and then acquiring a relief pitcher. So I'm gonna look at some of the reaction from Yankees fans here because it got a little ugly. So Jeff Passan actually tweeted something, and he said, "This might be the best deal the Yankees didn't make." I think I completely agree with him there because Juan Soto is a one-dimensional player. He's not a five-tool player. I don't even think he's as good as Shohei Ohtani is. I'm gonna be honest, and he's making more than Ohtani. And the Yankees might have dodged a bullet here. Obviously, we're not going to know for another 15 years whether or not this was a successful contract for the Mets, but we might know sooner than that if it was the right move for the Yankees. Another tweet. Lucky Lefty. Thank you for not doing us dirty when you had the chance at Aaron Judge. I'm holding the MVP trophy. There's a photo. I mentioned that. I want to thank Aaron Judge for not doing what Juan Soto just did because Juan Soto showed to me his true colors that he's not a leader. He's not a guy you can look up to as an example. He's the opposite of that. He's pompous, he's arrogant on the field, and he showed he is off the field as well. Loyalty over everything. Today, tomorrow, forever. From Islanders Zone. And it's a picture of Judge and Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole did the same thing this offseason. I want to thank Garrett Cole as well for taking the Yankees' original offer because the Yankees were not going to bring him back if he had won in more years. And Garrett Cole chose the Yankees over more money. He's another guy where he's a Yankee today, tomorrow, forever. He's a guy you can look up to. He's a leader and he's a role model, unlike Juan Soto. Soto is the boss. Boris works for Soto, not the other way around. Boris should keep his mouth shut and let Juan Soto make the decision by himself. He's totally capable of doing that by himself. That was someone, obviously, before Juan Soto had signed, had said to just let Juan Soto make the decision. And I think Juan Soto did make the decision. I don't think it was Scott Boras. I think it was Juan Soto. I think Juan Soto weighed the fact that, one, he's not going to be the best player. Um, he might not even be the second best player in a few years if Jason Dominguez is what everyone says he's going to be. Um, and I think he didn't like the fact of being overshadowed. Noel underscore Torres 93. So Juan Soto going to the Mets is devastating to my Yankees, but it is what it is. The team just got to move forward and sign the other player, sign other players, and we will be okay. Yeah, that's basically the bottom line here. You gotta move forward. You gotta move past the fact that your plan A said no to you, and you gotta sign the other players that are out there. You can't let this derail your whole offseason. You can't let this be an offseason like when they signed Ellsbury over Cano, and they made a drastic mistake. You can't make reckless decisions here. You gotta act now, and you have to get the top players on the market. Jared Lewis retweeted Bob Nightingale's tweet saying the New York Yankees offer was $760 million for 16 years, and the Mets offer was $765 for 15. He said Juan Soto is now public enemy number one. Bro left over $5 million. Boo the man every opportunity we get. I think that's basically what we're gonna see whenever Juan Soto comes to Yankee Stadium. Is the fans aren't gonna hold back. We are not happy with him. We thought he was a Yankee for life. We thought he valued the Yankee legacy, but he kind of spit on it and threw it right back in our face, acting like it didn't exist, that being a Yankee was not a big deal. Even though some of the things he said within the season and things after the season, that being a Yankee is great and it's the best fans in the world. You just called the Yankees the best fans in the world, and you're going to the crosstown rivals. So you're not going to the best fans in the world, you're going to the spectators of the world. Teddy Baseball 6 said Soto valued the money. Being a Yankee meant nothing to him. Basically, kind of what I just said. Gonna move on from that. Um, Keith McPherson, my buddy, said they don't give out rings at the winter meetings. Yankees, your move. That's another thing. People are acting like the Mets are automatically going to be a better team. They don't give World Series rings at the winter meetings. We have a whole season left. We have a whole off season left. Only time will tell what the Yankees' story is going to be next year. Joe's McFly, another one of my buddies, said, "Next time you think of booing Judge, remember homie took less to stay here." Very true. Very true. Kinda what I said too. Um, but I think the bottom line from all these takes, from the attitude to the fans, from my own opinions being a Yankee fan is Juan Soto betrayed us, stabbed us in the back, did not care about the Yankee legacy. He took $5 million more to go across town, and in perspective of $760 million, 5 million is not that much. It is uh, it it's less than a percent. And that's what I think is gonna be the takeaway here from everyone is that Juan Soto really did not care about being a Yankee, and we gotta move on. We have a whole off season left. Only time will tell what the Yankees do, what their true goals are, how motivated they are to get better. And I think that we're going to see some very big moves this week at the winter meetings. Moving on from baseball, because I feel like I talked about it for probably the first 30 minutes of the show. Want to move on to the New York Jets. They found a way to blow a game again. What a surprise. Me, you're a Jets fan. I think the Jets really played over my expectations at least because they had Brees Hall out their number one running back. And I think their game plan's a little bit more predictable when you take him out of the equation because Aaron Rodgers is very immobile and cannot move very well. His legs really don't work like they used to before. And he but he balled out yesterday. I'm gonna be honest. Aaron Rodgers balled out. He played well. And I think Jets fans got to be happy the fact that at least that guy's got some winning DNA in him, and I think that shows, hey, maybe he's got a little bit left in the tank. Maybe you could use him for next year. I depends really what their draft spot is. I asked a buddy of mine who's a Jets fan, what do you think the Jets' biggest problem right now is, and he said not knowing what to do at quarterback next season. I think that's pretty much the consensus here. Their future is completely blurred and no one knows what's gonna happen. But Jets fans, bottom line, should be happy about losing the game Sunday. I think it unblurs those lines a little bit, makes them a little bit clearer. You get a higher draft slot, your future gets boosted tremendously. You have the opportunity to draft a quarterback. I think you take it. Cam Ward, I think, would be a guy that could very possibly go to the Jets this offseason if they continue to lose. If not, probably not, but we'll see. Uh, but one thing I don't understand is the Jets starting Rodgers. I talked about how he balled out and how they easily could have won that game because of him. The guy's got a winning DNA. He's got a winning culture. He wants to win still. I think the main goal why he came to why he wanted to go to the Jets when he was traded, he said, "I want to go to the Jets," and the Jets were like, "Yeah, we want you too." Like, it was a mutual interest there. um, was because he wanted to build a new generation for the Jets, and it's really blown up in their face a little bit. But if you continue to roll him out there, there's always the risk of Aaron Rodgers playing like he did yesterday and possibly winning that game. That game could have easily went the other way. I mean, the Dolphins had to make a over a 50-yard field goal in order to draw that game to overtime. It's definitely questionable. It's something I'm gonna be hounding on, I think, until the Jets bench Aaron Rodgers is the fact, why are you starting this guy? You're giving your team a chance to win when he's out there. You're supposed to be losing now. The season's over. Aaron Rodgers didn't play the best he could at the beginning of the season, so now it's over. I think the correct move would have been to release him 2 weeks ago when they were debating it. Give this guy a chance to go elsewhere. Maybe he makes a deep playoff run. There are some quarterbacks that are hurt right now, like Brock Purdy got hurt for the Niners. Maybe Aaron Rodgers goes out there. We know he likes California. He was in California during the bye week. Maybe he would have went out there. Maybe he could make a deep run with the 49ers. I mean, imagine that. They have a great offensive line. They have Christian McCaffrey, who's obviously amazing, Jawan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk, Debo Samuel. Like, these are all guys that really could boost Aaron Rodgers. Maybe we'd see him play really well out there. I think that if they were to release him, that would have been a great story to see, but they didn't. So now I think you got to sit him for now, unless you plan on bringing him back next year, which I don't know. I don't even think Jets fans know if Aaron Rodgers is coming back or not. It's just a complete future that is undetermined. The future is always undetermined, but it's really, really confusing right now when you look at the future for the New York Jets. Moving on to the Giants. Malik Neighbors once again frustrated. There was a point in the game. He yelled towards the sideline. You're calling plays like I ain't out there. It basically was what Neighbors said. I have him on fantasy in 3 out of my 4 fantasy leagues, and he had 0 points in the first quarter. I was like, "What is going on? Is the guy still hurt? Um, is he dropping passes? Like, what's going on here?" I didn't really know. I mean, I'm at work. I'm kinda just glancing down at my phone seeing, "Wait, Malik Neighbors has 0 points? This is weird." Like, again, like, after, like, all this happened, like, last week, I'm like, "Oh, no. Like, what's going on here?" And apparently, that's what happened. They were calling plays that weren't around Malik. Obviously, they're not trying to win. Um, I got really scared there when Graham Gano lined up for the field goal at the end of the game. I was like, "Please, please, if you're listening, miss this field goal." And he missed. Brian Dable got really upset. I got really happy. Obviously, Brian Dable doesn't know if he's gonna have a job next year. I know my team is gonna be really bad this year, and I want them to get a good pick. So I was happy. Brian Dable was upset. Is what it is with that. But even if you're trying to lose, you're not trying to win. You still need to make your future happy, and you could still throw the ball to Malik Neighbors. You could still make those big plays with him. Make him happy. You don't want to make your future upset. You never want to do that. Saw that happen with Saquon Barkley. Saw it happen with Odell Beckham. Seems like the Giants never learn. Saw that with a Giants fan. Flew a airplane over MetLife Stadium that said John Mara and this dumpster fire. Pretty much the whole consensus among Giants fans. Uh, we've been miserable since 2012. We haven't had anything to root for. You treated Eli like a sack of potatoes. You never protected him when he was getting older, even though he was your guy. He brought you to 2 Super Bowls against the greatest dynasty in NFL history, and you did nothing to protect him. I think that's the huge issue with the Giants is they've never done anything to protect their players. Um, they're currently leading the odds to get the number 1 pick at 40%. Touched on the fact I don't want Shador. Shador is a high school quarterback at best. He's just the last name, Sanders. But with Shador comes Dion. I think the Giants know that. I think they're going to stray away from him with the number 1 pick if they have it. I think they're going to go with Travis Hunter. And I hope that's the way they go. I hope they learn from drafts of the past. You don't need to force a quarterback in a draft where there aren't many good options at quarterback. If you want to draft Cam Ward, trade down. This is the thing. They made that mistake with Daniel Jones. They said, we want to draft Daniel Jones. We're going to draft him 6 overall. And they did that. Fans got really upset because he was a guy that possibly could have gone in the 2nd round, and they could have got something for their 1st round pick, possibly a 1st round pick next year, and was a huge disaster. And funny enough, the best draft the Giants had recently was when they drafted Saquon Barkley. They got to learn from that and think it's okay to not draft a quarterback in the 1st round. Come down to reality a little bit. Admit you're not going to be great next year. And there's a quarterback in next year's draft that shares a last name to one of your best quarterbacks of all time, Eli Manning. Arch Manning is in next year's draft. Keep that in mind as Giants fans. I think a lot of Giants fans will get upset if they draft Travis Hunter. I think a lot of Giants fans are going to get upset if they don't. I think it's going to be very split. I think a lot of people around my age, funny enough, are going to want them to draft Shador. I'm one of the guys where I look at Shador and I'm just like, Shador's not great. Shador is flashy. He does a lot of stuff on the field that, ooh, he's cool. He's going to be a great NFL player. Because look at him. Look at his celebrations. That's great and everything. But celebrations don't win you Super Bowls. And one of the greatest players in the NFL, probably going to go down as one of the greatest player in NFL history, Patrick Mahomes, is one of the most reserved players, in my opinion. Aaron Judge-esque, a great leader. Players like Shador Sanders only think of themselves. Dion was kind of like that too when he played. And I think that Dion and Shador are in it for themselves. And I want to stray away from that as much as possible. I think you want to draft a quarterback, all right, trade down, draft Cam Ward. If you have the number 1 overall pick, draft Travis Hunter. Wait till next year, draft Arch Manning. Those are the 2 possibilities. Moving on to the New York Knicks. I like what I'm seeing. I think that's really how I put it, plain and simple. I like what I'm seeing. One gripe I have before the positives is you got to try Precious Achiuwa at the 5. He's back now. Obviously, Jericho Sims has been a huge liability out there when he's on the court. He's got a little bit better of late. I will give him that. But try Precious Achiuwa at the 5. You tried it last year. It worked out pretty well. So why not try it this year? Try something different. Try Precious Achiuwa at the 5. See how it works. But don't let it be something you don't try and think, man, maybe if I tried Precious Achiuwa at center, maybe we would have won that game. Don't leave questions unanswered. That's a huge issue right now in the future for New York sports. When you think about it, a lot of questions are left unanswered. Who are the Giants going to draft? What are the Yankees going to do now that they lost Juan Soto? Was the Mets' future really better than the Yankees' future? Should we try Precious Achiuwa at center? There's a lot of things here where you think and you're just like, okay, there are a lot of unanswered questions here. Try it. See how it works. It doesn't work, you never got to try it again. These are things that I feel like are so elementary, but they help you win. When you think critically and you analyze the situation and you're like, okay, I have this guy that could possibly play center and be really good. I have this guy at center; it's his natural position. So, but he's not playing very great. I think the answer is right in front of them. All right, I got a guy that might play center really well. Yes, it's not his natural position, but it's not Karl Anthony Towns' natural position either. So why don't you apply that same logic to Precious Achiuwa? It's right in front of them. But now I'm going to get to the positives because there's a few of them. I like the camaraderie I'm seeing. I think that's what the Knicks lacked the first few weeks. And I think that's what caused them to lose some games they should have won. Was the fact, hey, these guys, they're a new group. We got Michael Bridges in. Obviously, he's played with 2 of the guys, Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson. We got Karl Anthony Towns in. How are we going to make this all work here? We lost a few key bench pieces. How is this all going to come together and be a team? I think we're seeing that with the Knicks. Some of the passes they're making are unbelievable. no look passes where I'm just like, last year's Knicks would have taken that shot. And then Jalen Brunson, no look pass down to the paint, past two defenders, dunk by Michael Bridges. It's crazy. Or hey, I have a clear 2-point shot here, but I see someone at the other end of the arch that has a 3-point that's clear. I'm gonna get the ball to him. That's what I'm seeing from the New York Knicks, and I really like it. It's a team right now. And one thing I had to say when the Knicks acquired Karl Anthony Towns, and the one downside on his game was the fact that he was considered to be soft. He's become tough, become really tough. The dunk going into the second half a few games ago, he went over two defenders. A lot of contact there. A play I don't think he would have made last year on the Timberwolves, and he dunked it right on top of someone's head. I was like, okay. I was like, this guy's tough. He's got grit. He's got heart. And he's playing with that every game that I've seen him. I look up, I'm just like, man, he's pressing him. I'm just like, really? I'm just like, there's no reason to be doing that. But hey, it's great defense. Cat, his downside was his defense. And I think he's playing great defense right now. I think he's playing tough. I said it when the Knicks acquired Towns that Tom Thibodeau would make him tough. And we're seeing it. It's been amazing. The game versus the Pistons, for people that are worried about that, I'm not worried about it very much. The Pistons legit could not miss. It looked like there was a magnet that was attracting the ball into the net every single shot for the Pistons. I was like, okay. I was like, this is a game we're going to lose. I could have turned it off in the first quarter and done that. Rangers. They have made a little bit of a ruckus here. We still suck. We're still pretty bad. Um, I don't think that's gonna happen until they acquire someone else. They obviously traded Jacob Trouba. Gonna talk about that right now. The trade of Jacob Trouba was a complete fleece. They got Anaheim to take all of the contract. I don't care what we got back. We got a guy no one's heard of in return and a fourth rounder. Perfectly fine. We could have gotten nothing as long as Anaheim took that whole contract. I did not care. I've been pushing for a Jacob Trouba trade since day one of the offseason last year. I've been pushing for it in season last year. I think that Jacob Trouba was a huge issue. He's not a leader. I talk about leader being accountable, someone you could look up to, someone that's loyal, resilient. He did not have all of those factors. He had some of them, I'll give him that, but he did not have all of them. And we saw right after that, Igor Shesterkin signed a record-breaking 8-year, $92 million contract. He declined that same contract a few months ago. Makes me think. I talk about this whole thing. We got to think analytically, critically. You declined that same contract a few months ago. What was the difference on this team a few months ago? Jacob Trouba was on the team. He was the captain. I don't think Igor liked Jacob Trouba. I don't think the players respected Jacob Trouba as a captain. His issues on the ice aside, the fact that he was very, very terrible at the fact that he would constantly be in the penalty box because of some of the hits he would lay on players. Obviously, great. You have a player that's tough. You have a player that's going to lay some hits on people. That's great and everything. It's called an enforcer. It's not called a captain. We have one of those. His name's Matt Rempe. I expect him to get a lot more playing time right now that Jacob Trouba is gone. Yes, different positions, but nonetheless, similar role there. But I think this Jacob Trouba issue's behind us now. We got to look forward. What's the future hold? That's the theme of this episode right now. If you can't tell, what does the future hold? I think they have to use the money they got there. money at the trade deadline has increased from 5 million to 21 million with the trading of Jacob Truba at the deadline, and now you could go out there and get basically whoever you want. This is such an exciting time. I can't remember the last time I've been like, "Man, the Rangers can really go out there and acquire whoever they want." They legitimately could right now. And that's what makes that Jacob Trouba trade so massive to me is the fact that they can really go out there and get some people they weren't able to get last deadline because of the cap constraints. They couldn't get the deadline before because of cap constraints. So on and so forth. It's kind of this huge thing where, okay, now we could go out there and really get the top guys on the market. It's an amazing move for the Rangers, and I think it makes the future clear because you're like, okay, who do we want at the deadline? Let's go get them. All right, who do we have young player wise? Who's coming up? I look at Victor Mancini as an example. All right, that's great. He fills that hole. Who can we pivot to go get at the deadline? Let's go get him. It really clears the future up a little bit for the Rangers there. I think it's great. You have your goalie locked down. You traded away a huge issue on your team. You have all this cap space. Now you could go out and acquire whoever you want. Rangers are in a much better position than they were a week ago. All right. I'm going to move on to what I think wraps this whole thing together. I think the narrative in all of New York sports right now is what does the future hold? I think the only team that doesn't fit into this narrative is the Knicks, who seem to have a clear future right now. They have a lot of their guys locked down for the future. We know they're going to be competitive for the next few years. We know who's going to be on that roster for the next few years. The Knicks, I think I would exclude from this a little bit, but it's going to be something I continue to monitor where the future of New York sports is. I feel like 2 years ago, we were in a completely different situation. The Jets had just acquired Aaron Rodgers. The Giants had just made the playoffs. The Rangers had a nucleus. They were a year removed from making the Eastern Conference Finals. The Yankees were a step away from the World Series. Obviously, saw them make the World Series this year. But where has the normal dominance of New York sports gone? And I hope the future tells us that New York sports is still on top and we're still the mecca of the sports industry and that this is where everyone comes to compete at the highest level. But right now it's unclear. I have to see what the Yankees do this week. I got to see what the Rangers do at the deadline. I got to see what the Jets do in the offseason. I got to see what the Giants do in the draft. There's so many things left to be said, and I can't wait to explore them with you guys. All right. That's all I have for today. Thank you for tuning in. And this is Empire State of Sports signing off for the last time this semester.